When Thomas Parker opened the first letter, his hands were shaking. "If you're reading this," it began, "then I didn't make it." Not just one letter, but 26 of them. Each sealed, each numbered, each meant to be opened on specific dates throughout their daughter's life. How do you preserve a mother's love after she's gone? How do you raise a child with only paper memories of the woman who gave her life? This is the story of how one woman's final act of love changed 3 lives forever. Have you ever wondered what you would leave behind if you knew your time was short? Let me know in the comments. Thomas and Eliza Parker had what many would call a picture-perfect life. College sweethearts who married after graduation. They'd spent 5 years building their careers. Thomas as an architect, Eliza as a children's book illustrator, before deciding to start a family. Their modest Victorian home in Portland had an extra bedroom they'd painted sunshine yellow, waiting for the day they'd fill it with a crib and stuffed animals. After 2 years of trying and 1 heartbreaking miscarriage, Eliza finally shared the news over a candlelit dinner. She was pregnant, and this time the doctors were optimistic. But beneath her radiant smile, Eliza harbored a secret. A rare blood condition diagnosed in her teens meant pregnancy carried significant risks. Risks her doctors had warned about, but that she had downplayed when discussing them with Thomas. "She never wanted me to worry," Thomas would later recall. That was Eliza, always protecting everyone else, even when she was the one who needed protection. During her second trimester, while Thomas was away on a 3-day business trip, Eliza sat at her drawing desk, the same desk where she'd illustrated stories of brave princesses and clever foxes, and began a different kind of project. 26 letters, each addressed to the daughter she might never meet. It's strange how the universe gives us intuition sometimes, isn't it? That quiet voice inside that warns us to prepare for something we don't want to face. The day Sophia Parker entered the world was both the happiest and most devastating of Thomas's life. There had been complications during delivery, a severe hemorrhage that the medical team couldn't control. Thomas remembered fragments of that day with painful clarity, the sudden flurry of medical staff, the alarms, being ushered from the room, and finally the doctor's face as he approached in the waiting area. "We did everything we could," the doctor had said, words that changed Thomas's world forever. But amid the crushing grief came a miracle. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of new life with Eliza's chestnut hair and curious eyes. Sophia, named after Eliza's grandmother, just as they'd planned. A nurse had placed the newborn in Thomas's trembling arms. "She has her mother's eyes," the nurse had whispered, and Thomas had broken down, torn between bottomless loss and overwhelming love. 3 days later, when Thomas finally returned home with Sophia, his sister Rebecca, waiting to help, he found a sealed envelope on his pillow. For Thomas, open first, written in Eliza's unmistakable handwriting. Inside was a letter unlike any other, a roadmap through grief, an explanation of what would follow, and a promise that even in death, Eliza would help raise their daughter. "My dearest Thomas," she had written, "if you're reading this, then I didn't make it. But our daughter did, and that's all that matters. In my desk drawer, you'll find 26 more letters, 1 for each milestone in Sophia's life, from her first birthday to her wedding day. I may not be there in person, but I'll be there in words. This isn't goodbye. It's just me loving you both in the only way I still can." Think about that for a moment. What would you write if you had to condense a lifetime of motherly wisdom into a few dozen letters? The first year was the hardest. Thomas moved through life in a fog, functioning on autopilot, changing diapers, preparing bottles, rocking Sophia to sleep, all while battling waves of grief that threatened to drown him. Rebecca stayed for the first 2 months, but eventually had to return to her own life in Chicago. Thomas's mother helped when she could, but at 72, caring for an infant quickly exhausted her. It was during this time that Thomas truly understood the depth of Eliza's foresight. Her first letter to him hadn't just been about the letters for Sophia. It contained practical advice too. Names of night nurses they could afford with the life insurance money. A freezer full of pre-prepared meals she'd stocked during her last trimester. Even a note about which formula to try if Sophia had trouble feeding. She thought of everything. Thomas told his grief counselor, "It's like she's still taking care of us from beyond." The night before Sophia's first birthday, Thomas sat on the floor of his bedroom, the first of Sophia's letters in his hands. According to Eliza's instructions, he was to read it first, then save it for when Sophia was old enough to understand. "My precious baby girl," Eliza had written. "Today you are 1 year old. I wish more than anything that I could be there to see you smash your first birthday cake and take those early wobbly steps. Your daddy is probably doing an amazing job, though he's too humble to admit it. Make sure you give him extra hugs today. He deserves them. Remember that even though you can't see me, I'm watching over you, cheering at every milestone. You were worth everything to me, Sophia. Everything and more." Thomas read the letter aloud to his sleeping daughter that night, tears streaming down his face. It was the first time in months he'd felt Eliza's presence so strongly, as if she were there in the room with them, guiding them forward. Have you ever felt the presence of someone who's no longer with you? Sometimes love really does transcend everything, even death itself. As Sophia grew from toddler to child, the letters became their ritual, a way to mark time and celebrate milestones with Eliza still at the center of their family. There was a letter for Sophia's first day of kindergarten, filled with encouragement about making friends and being brave in new situations. Another for her 10th birthday, with stories about Eliza at that same age. Each envelope contained not just words but small treasures: a pressed flower from Eliza's wedding bouquet, a sketch of Sophia as Eliza had imagined she might look, a tiny silver locket with Eliza's photo inside. But life wasn't just about the letters. There were challenges too. Thomas struggling to answer questions about death when Sophia was 6, navigating school mother-daughter events, Sophia's growing awareness of what she'd lost. When Sophia was 8, she went through a phase of anger, furious at a world where other kids had mothers and she did not. "It's not fair," she had screamed, tearing down a photo of Eliza from the wall. "I don't want letters, I want my mom." Thomas had sat on the floor beside his daughter's crumpled form, gathering her into his arms. "I know, sunshine," he'd whispered. "I want her back too." That night, Thomas broke protocol and opened the letter marked "For Sophia's first big heartbreak," deciding that this moment qualified even if it wasn't about a boy. "My sweet girl," Eliza had written. "Right now your heart feels shattered, and nothing anyone says seems to help. That's okay. Some pain can't be fixed with words. It can only be lived through. But remember this. You come from a long line of women who bend but don't break. Your great-grandmother survived the Depression. Your grandmother raised 3 children alone after your grandfather died. And I fought to bring you into this world, knowing the risks. That same strength runs in your veins, Sophia. Feel everything deeply. Cry until you can't anymore. Then stand up and remember who you are. You are half me, half your father, and wholly miraculous." The next morning, Sophia had carefully rehung the photo she'd torn down and asked Thomas if they could visit her mother's grave to leave fresh flowers. It's incredible how the right words at the right moment can heal wounds we thought would never close, isn't it? By the time Sophia entered high school, the letters had become less frequent, saved for bigger moments as Eliza had planned. Thomas had remarried when Sophia was 12, to a kind kindergarten teacher named Claire, who never tried to replace Eliza, but instead honored her memory alongside them. But as Sophia's 16th birthday approached, Thomas faced a dilemma. The letter marked for Sophia's 16th birthday had been stored in his desk drawer for years. but now he couldn't find it. He tore apart his office, checked safety deposit boxes, called relatives who might have been keeping it. Nothing. The letter was gone. For Thomas, this was more than losing a piece of paper. It was losing another piece of Eliza, another connection to the woman they'd both loved and lost. How could he face Sophia empty-handed on a milestone birthday when Eliza's letters had been their tradition for so long? The night before Sophia's birthday, Thomas sat her down and confessed. "I've looked everywhere," he said, voice breaking. "I don't know what happened to it." To his surprise, Sophia squeezed his hand. "Dad, it's okay. Mum's letters were a gift, but they're not the only way she's with us." She led him to her bedroom and pulled out a sketchbook. Inside were drawings, dozens of them, in a style eerily similar to Eliza's. Landscapes, animals, and portraits, including several of a woman Thomas recognized immediately as Eliza, though Sophia had only known her through photographs. "Mum's last letter to me said I might have inherited her talent, and that drawing might help me feel close to her," Sophia explained. "So I've been taking art classes after school. I was going to show you tomorrow, but..." She handed him a portrait she'd drawn, Thomas and Eliza on their wedding day, recreated from an old photograph. "You've given me everything, Dad," Sophia said. "You shared her with me in every way you could. But I think maybe it's time we accept that we don't need letters anymore to know what she would say or do. She's part of us now." That night, Thomas cried for the first time in years, not from grief, but from the realization that Eliza's greatest gift hadn't been the letters at all. It had been Sophia herself, carrying forward her mother's spirit in ways no one could have predicted. Sometimes the legacy we leave behind isn't what we planned, is it? It takes on a life of its own. On the morning after Sophia's graduation from college, Thomas was cleaning out the attic when he found a dusty box he didn't recognize. Inside were photo albums, old sketch pads of Eliza's, and an envelope he'd never seen before. "For Thomas, when Sophia graduates," it read in Eliza's handwriting. With trembling fingers, he opened it. "My beloved Thomas," Eliza had written, "if you're reading this, our daughter has graduated from college, something we talked about when she was just a dream we shared. I'm certain you've done an incredible job raising her, and I wish I could have been by your side to see the woman she's become. There's something I need to tell you now that I couldn't before. The doctors told me early in my pregnancy that continuing carried significant risks, more than I let you know. They suggested termination as the safest option for my health, but I couldn't bear the thought of not bringing our child into the world. It was my choice, Thomas, mine alone, and I made it with full awareness of what might happen. I don't want you to ever think my death was senseless tragedy, or that our daughter's life came at too high a cost. It was the most meaningful exchange I could imagine. I got to feel her grow inside me, to know that a piece of our love would continue even if I couldn't. By now, the letters have served their purpose. You both needed them at first, you to feel less alone in parenting, Sophia to know the mother she never got to meet. But you haven't truly needed them for years. The woman our daughter has become is because of you, Thomas, because of your strength, your love, your unwavering dedication. It's time for both of you to fully live in the present. My final request is this: no more letters after this one, no more looking back. Just move forward, loving each other and building beautiful lives. That's all I ever wanted. Forever yours, Eliza. When Thomas showed the letter to Sophia that evening, they sat together in silence for a long time, hands clasped, hearts full. She knew, Sophia finally whispered. She knew exactly when we'd be ready to let go. What would you sacrifice for someone you love? And how do you know when it's time to move forward? 5 years later, Sophia stood in a hospital room, cradling her newborn daughter. Thomas and Claire waited nearby, their eyes fixed on the newest addition to their family. Eliza, Sophia said softly announcing the name they'd chosen, Eliza Parker Wilson. Thomas reached out a finger which the baby grasped with surprising strength. 3 generations connected in that moment, past, present, and future intertwined. Later that night, when the visitors had gone and her husband James was asleep in the chair beside her bed, Sophia opened her laptop and began to type. "My precious baby girl," she wrote, "today you were born, and you've already changed everything. There's so much I want to tell you about your grandmother Eliza, whose name you carry." She paused, considering what she was doing, then smiled and continued writing. Not a letter to be saved for some distant future milestone, but the beginning of a book, the story of a woman who had loved so deeply that she found a way to mother her child even after she was gone. Sophia typed through the night, the words flowing easily. She would tell the world about her mother's letters, about growing up guided by paper wisdom, about the extraordinary love that had shaped her life. It would be her gift to her mother and to her daughter, and to anyone who needed to believe that love never truly disappears. It just changes form. In the end, Eliza Parker never got to hold her daughter, but her legacy lived on in ways she could never have imagined, through letters that bridged the gap between life and death, through the artistic talent that skipped a generation, through a granddaughter who would grow up knowing her name and her story, and perhaps most importantly, through the lesson she taught them all, that love, true love, finds a way to endure, even when everything else is lost. Life doesn't always give us the endings we hope for. Sometimes it takes away the people we can't imagine living without. But if Eliza and Thomas's story teaches us anything, it's that loss isn't the end of love. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a different kind. What letters would you write to the people you love if you knew your time was limited? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please consider subscribing for more stories that remind us of the power of human connection. Until next time, remember that the greatest legacy we can leave isn't in possessions or achievements. It's in the hearts of those who carry our love forward.